Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just a little ways from the English Channel. I'd like to repeat what I said last night when we finished, that I deeply appreciate the feelings I'm receiving from some of you, and I imagine from your heart, all of you, appreciating that we're doing this every day. But I just wanted to tell you that I probably enjoy it even more than you do, because there's nothing that gives more pleasure than even making an attempt at bringing people closer to Krishna. Because the point of all of our austerities and our hard work and our meditation and japa and whatever else we do, even our deity worship, is to bring people closer to Krishna, to bring more attachment to Krishna, the person. In the beginning of devotional life, we become attached to the service and doing the service. And that's also none different than Krishna. But the purpose of it is to bring us closer to Krishna. And I think that this literature, this Brhad Bhagavatamrta, does that as well as any book that I've ever read, and outside of Prabhupada's books, of course. And Srila Prabhupada made the statement in the 5th chapter of the Adi Lila, that if you want to understand Krishna devotional service, and then you have to read this book. You must read this book. He said it. He wrote it in his books. So it's my pleasure, and I'm getting such relief from doing this. It's the highlight of my day. It makes my life worth living. So don't feel too sorry for me if you see me pushing myself a little bit. It's the greatest pleasure. Okay, now that that's over with, Srimad Bhagavatamrta Stotram, written by Srila Sanatana Goswami, and glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the basis of the Brhad Bhagavatamrta. 5 verses of pure nectar. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kaligdwan Ditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Mandishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Anandanamostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chuchatakara hanamunchagada chinmam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me, no excuses. always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Gopakumar became frustrated in the kingdom where he had inherited from the king by providence. And the thing that discouraged him was that the Brahmins and what they were teaching was that Mahaprasadam, if it's in the wrong place, in the wrong hands, should be rejected. So now some devotees from Jagannath Puri came and explained to him the glories of Lord Jagannath and of Lord Jagannath's Mahaprasad. So he's come and he's entered the temple and he sees Lord Jagannath for the first time, and he becomes overwhelmed and he's running to them to embrace them. And the guards came, and this is what happens. Beginning with text 176, second part, chapter 1, Brhad Bhagavatamrta. Just then, the guards struck me with their sticks and stopped me. Realizing what I had done, I felt embarrassed. This is... I'm in 73. I already read that, sorry. After he got struck with the sticks and left the temple, some very kind devotees gave him some Mahaprasad. Oh Brahmana, this is 175. After eating that Mahaprasad, I quickly re-entered the Lord's temple. From the wonders I then saw, I felt a reservoir of happiness, and I'm unable to understand my heart, let alone describe it with my mouth. I simply stood there all day, relishing bliss. Commentary. Gopakumar's heart could not assimilate everything he was relishing. One amazing thing after another, without stop, and each wonder inconceivable. How then could he properly describe what he saw? The power of speech is usually slower and more limited than the power of the mind. Text 176. At night there was a great festival with the Lord dressed and ornamented in elaborate splendor. But finally, after a great ceremony with offerings of palmfuls of flowers, it was time to leave the temple. Text 177. As I thus enjoyed ever new festivals in the company of saintly devotees, time passed unnoticed. I seemed to forget the sorrow of my separation from this land of Braja. Text 178. Commentary, sorry. The pain Gopakumar had been feeling from being outside Braja subsided in the presence of Lord Jagannath, but it was never uprooted completely from his heart. 178. Everywhere I heard about and saw for myself the most exalted mercy of Lord Sri Jagannath on his servants, and perceived the various commands he gave them. Commentary. In reciprocating with his devotees, Lord Jagannath often went out of his way to fulfill their various desires, and would issue commands so as to give them opportunities for service. Gopakumar not only heard about this mercy from numerous sources, but saw examples of it with his own eyes. Text 179. Nothing other than the sight of Lord Jagannath attracted me. I even lost interest in hearing about his glories from the Puranas. Commentary. At first, Gopakuma was quite interested in the recitations by Puranic experts in the temple, in which the glories of Lord Jagannath were read from the Brahma Purana and other scriptures. But as he became more and more attracted to the beauty of Lord Jagannath's lotus face, he could no longer pay attention to those recitations. That is one reason he remained ignorant about such basic facts as the existence of the heavenly planets. Text 180. And even if I sometimes underwent some physical or mental distress, as soon as I saw the lotus-eyed Lord, the pain disappeared. Commentary. It is to be expected that any embodied soul will often be distracted from the ecstasy of seeing Lord Jagannath's lotus face by unavoidable physical and mental disturbances. Diseases constantly threaten the bodies of conditioned souls. And all kinds of desires and vexations constantly pass through their minds. Sound familiar? Gopakumar also felt these natural disturbances, but they at once disappeared whenever he came before Lord Jagannath. The bliss he felt by seeing the Lord made him forget his troubles and gradually diminished them almost to nil. Text 181. Thus, thinking I had attained the final result of my chanting, I became indifferent even to chanting. For many days I lived in the city of Lord Jagannath in such perfect happiness. Text 182. Then I began to feel the urge for more intimate service to the Lord. But this desire also brought me great pain because it remained unfulfilled. Commentary. Just living in Jagannath Puri was a source of great bliss, but Gopakumar began to feel attracted to the even greater bliss of rendering personal service to Lord Jagannath. This urge, first felt as a vague discomfort, gradually became a conscious desire. This urge, first felt as a vague discomfort, gradually became a conscious desire. Gopakumar wanted to enter the inner rooms of the temple and approach the Lord as one of his personal attendants. One might wonder whether this desire was no more practical than wanting to touch the moon with one's hand, but Gopakumar refers to Lord Jagannath as Prabhu, indicating that the Lord can do anything. On special festival days, the Lord's chief servant, the mighty king who ruled that country, came to the holy city to see the Lord's transcendental face. To prevent problems like disturbances to respectable people and damage to the Lord's gardens, unimportant people like me were then forbidden to freely see the Lord. Commentary. By the special mercy of Lord Jagannath, the king of Puri at that time was a Chakravarti, an overlord of several other kings. Chakravarti. By the privilege of his royal position, he was officially the principal worshipper of the Lord. His capital was elsewhere, But for major festivals like the Ratha Yatra, he would come to Sri Jagannath Puri. On those occasions, common people like Gopakumar, without status and entourage, would be restricted from freely coming to see the Lord. This prohibition was not offensive on the part of the king, who was a saintly devotee, but because it was necessary to protect the Lord's property and service. If everyone were allowed into the temple while the king was present, he and the respectable people with him would have difficulty taking darshan, and the Lord's flower gardens could be damaged, or his ponds polluted by unruly mobs. At the very least, the Lord's privacy would be threatened if too many people were allowed to converge on the temple. Thus the poor people in the city had to tolerate having their movements restricted, and then too they were harassed by the presence of the king's large army with its elephants, her chariots, horsemen, and infantry soldiers. Text 185. One day, when I thus felt sick at heart, I saw my spiritual master standing in front of Sri Jagannath Dev, overwhelmed by the highest ecstatic love of God. Commentary. Somehow the same great soul who had given Gopakumar his mantra in Sri Vrindavan was now in Puri, taking darshan of Lord Jagannath. 186. But before I could speak with him, he left to go somewhere, and my mind was so attracted to the beautiful face of Lord Jagannath that I didn't notice which way my guru went. Commentary. Gopakumar made a serious mistake by neglecting to follow his guru and meet him, but it was not offensive because he had innocently fallen victim to Lord Jagannath's beauty. Text 187. After searching here and there, the next day I found him on the shore of the ocean, dancing alone in the ecstasies of Nam Sankirtan. Seeing me prostrating myself like a rod in the ground, my all-knowing master gave me his blessings. Then he embraced me and mercifully told me this. Commentary. If Gopakumar's guru knew everything, surely he knew, without being told, the desires of Gopakumar had in his heart. Text 189. My dear boy, whatever you desire, by chanting your mantra, by its power you will fully achieve. Indeed, you will attain more than you desire. Commentary. Before performing any religious ritual, including the chanting of mantras, one should solemnly formulate one's sankalpa, intention, either verbally or mentally. In most Vedic sacrifices, one can expect one's sankalpa to be fulfilled only in the indefinite future, most likely in the next life. But by the blessings of his guru, Gopakumar's specific sankalpas would all be quickly realized, as we shall see as his story continues. Text 190. This chanting, please understand, is another form of service to Sri Jagannath. Have faith in this and never give up your japa. Commentary. Even if Gopakumar has no other desire than to render personal service to Lord Jagannath, here he is told to understand that chanting his mantra is intimate service to the Lord. Gopakumar may not have seen this for himself, but he should accept it out of confidence in the words of his guru. Aware of Gopakumar's intense desire to serve Jagannath, the all-knowing guru also perceives that Gopakumar is neglecting his mantra and so is helping him achieve his desire by correcting his neglect. Text 191. By the potency of this mantra, may you live a long time. May you always have the form of a cowherd boy, and may you develop the right mentality for tasting the mantra's fruits. Commentary. To help Gopakumar take advantage of the benediction that his mantra will fulfill all his desires, the Guru gives him 3 more blessings. First, Gopakumar will live long enough to enjoy whatever he may desire, even if that involves traveling to higher planets, where life is much longer than on earth. Second, he will avoid old age and its ailments, staying always a young cowherd boy. Haribo. In other words, throughout his life, he will keep the same age and dress he has now, regardless of where he goes, be it Lord Brahma's planet or Vaikuntha. Third, his mind will not become confused or agitated by the immediate fulfillment of his desires, because the mantra will keep his intelligence fixed on the final goal, to see with his own eyes Lord Madan Gopal and join in the Lord's sporting pastimes. And as a side result of this third benediction, even when Gopakumar achieves the posts of an emperor and of Lord Indra, he will remain ignorant of the planets he has not yet seen, Swargaloka, Maharloka, and so on. This so-called ignorance will help him progress toward ultimate happiness, as Sri Narada will later explain at the end of chapter 5. Text 192. Sometimes you will see me here, and sometimes in Vrindavan. Having thus instructed me, my Guru suddenly left to go elsewhere. Commentary. Gopakumar has still not received complete instructions on how to chant his mantra, but in his Guru's opinion, the time and place are not proper for divulging that information. Instead, the Guru promises that Gopakumar will meet him again a few more times. If Gopakumar were to be given complete information about his sadhana, he might reach perfection quickly, but as fate would have it, he must first do some traveling around the universe. Text 193. Separated from my Guru, I felt very much aggrieved, but when I went to see Lord Jagannath, I regained my peace of mind and made a greater endeavor to chant my japa. Commentary. The unfortunate can become free of distress simply by taking shelter of Sri Jagannath Dev. They need not resort to any other remedy. And if they fail to see Lord Jagannath, they can expect neither relief from suffering nor real happiness. 194 and 195. Whenever my eagerness to see Brajabhumi became intense, on the strength of Sri Jagannath's glories, the many gardens of his abode would appear to me as Vrindavan, its sea as the Yamuna, and the slope of Niladri hill as Govardhan. Commentary. The first result Gopakumar noticed after receiving the serious chanting of his mantra was that he saw certain special opulences of Lord Jagannath. In particular, he became aware of various ways in which Lord Jagannath's abode, Purushottam Chetra, is non-different from Krishna's abode, Brajabhumi. Lord Jagannath's various pleasure gardens reminded Gopakumar of the Vrindavan forest. The shore of the salt ocean reminded him of the Yamuna river, and the portion of Niladri hill near the western side of Lord Jagannath's temple reminded him of Govardhan. This was not, thus he was not as miserable as he would have been had he not been able to see Krishna's abode. Text 196. In this way I continued living happily there. In this way I continued living there happily. Every day, after taking darshan of the Lord, I chanted my mantra, following the order of my worshipable Guru, and hoping to achieve my desired perfection. Commentary. Each morning, after visiting Lord Jagannath in his temple, Gopakumar would return to his residence and sit in a quiet place to chant his mantra. He was meditating on the specific sankalpa of being allowed to join the temple service of Jagannath. As this verse indicates, he was no longer so obsessed with seeing Lord Jagannath that he neglected his mantra. And he was beginning to develop both genuine devotion for his spiritual master and faith in the transcendental goal of life. Text 197. Then the king of Puri passed away, and his eldest son, who was very renounced, refused to accept the kingdom. Commentary. Gopakumar's guru had promised that the mantra would readily fulfill all of Gopakumar's desires, and now the first of those desires was about to be realized. Text 197 through 202 describe how Gopakumar became the king of Puri and was able to enter Lord Jagannath's intimate service. The crown prince declined the throne because he wanted only to continue taking darshan of Lord Jagannath's lotus face. He did not even want the privileged services granted to the king. Text 198. The ministers consulted. The ministers consulted the Lord of the universe and took his command. And after observing in me the signs of a Maharaj, they anointed me king. Now, one thing I want to mention, this is just, I may be spoiling the plot a little bit, but sometimes devotees think that these are such incredible things that are happening to Gopakumar. It's just something that somebody made up. But the thing is, we'll find out later on in this volume that the Guru was actually Krishna. That's why anything can happen that he says. Commentary. Assembled before Lord Jagannath, the ministers humbly submitted. The eldest prince is so attached to seeing your lotus face that he has no interest in ruling. And as a matter of principle, none of the younger princes should assume the throne as long as the eldest is alive. None of the king's other family members display the character of a great ruler. But if no one becomes king, law and order in the country cannot be maintained even for a short time. Please tell us whom we should place on the throne. In reply, Lord Jagannath commanded them, one of my devotees, a young cowherd boy born in Sri-Govardhan, has come here. You should crown him. Or else he told them, crown whoever you want. Or else he told them, crown whomever you find has the signs of a Maharaj. In this way, the Supreme Lord, the compassionate friend of the wretched, the most clever maker of all arrangements, ordered the ministers to look for a person with kingly symptoms they duly found in Gopakumar. Thus, neither the princes nor others had an opportunity to become envious of him. Some of the marks of royalty are mentioned in reference to Emperor Bharat, the son of Shakuntala. In Srimad Bhagavatam 9:20-24, Chakram Dakshina Hastesha Padmakosho Sipaidayo. He had the mark of Lord Krishna's disc on the palm of his right hand, and a mark of a lotus whorl on the soles of his feet. I tried to improve the worship in various festivals of Lord Jagannath in Puri, especially his 12 major festivals. The most important among them, the Gundicha Ratha Yatra. Commentary. In each of the 12 months, beginning with Phalguna, Lord Jagannath enjoys a major festival in his temple, such as his swing festival, Chandan festival, bathing festival, Rath Yatra, and Dhammanaka, the festival of breaking the Dhammanaka tree. O King of Puri. As King of Puri, Gopakumar increased the opulence of all these celebrations. He gave the most attention to improving Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra to the Gundicha temple. Text 200. For these festivals, saintly persons gathered in groups from around the world, absorbed in dancing, singing, and so on. They appeared as if insane with love of God. Commentary. The sadhus who visited Purushottam Kshetra belonged to many different sampradayas, but they would all assemble happily in their own Sankirtan groups for Lord Jagannath's festivals. Text 201. I offered the kingdom with all its royal enjoyments at the lotus feet of Jagannath. In a completely dependent mood, I took my pleasure in simply serving the Lord. Commentary. Even as King of Puri, Gopakumar's retained his innocence. He remained simple-hearted, as he had always been. But because he was the ultimate authority among the servants of Lord Jagannath, he could serve the Lord whenever and however he wanted. Text 202. With his dearest permanent servants, the Lord enjoyed confidential talks and sometimes displayed intimate loving pastimes. Commentary. Now, wanting Gopakumar to make another change in his life, Lord Jagannath arranged for a seed of discontent to be planted in his heart. Text 202 through 205 thus describe how Gopakumar began to feel jealous of the hereditary Orison servants of Jagannath, to whom the Lord extended special privileges. Text 203. Or even when the playful Lord Jagannath stood still as his pastime, his closest devotees gave themselves to his intimate mood, amazed at his greatness and delighted in love. Commentary. In the private company of the arisen pujaris, Lord Jagannath would sometimes talk and engage in various personal exchanges. But even when he remained motionless and silent on the altar, those most intimate devotees still had very special relationships with him. The Lord is not a the Lord is not a lifeless log. He only pretends to be like that. Every chance he gets, he indulges in all sorts of sports and tricks with his devotees. The pujaris were astonished to see how Lord Jagannath, at one moment, acts like a naughty child, and the next poses as an immobile deity. But rather than become morose when Jagannath was not active and speaking to them, the pujaris were happy to go along with whatever pastime the Lord was playing at the moment, be it active or passive. Text 204. I also wanted to join in those special pastimes, but being just a newcomer, without exclusive devotion to Lord Jagannath, how could I receive his mercy in those special ways? Commentary. Gopakumar thought himself unfit even to desire to join in Lord Jagannath's intimate talks and pastimes with his servants. In fact, he thought that the very desire arose in his heart from jealousy. No wonder, therefore, he felt distressed. He had only recently entered Jagannath's service and was not one of the hereditary pujaris. Nor did he have fixed, unalloyed devotion to the Lord of Nilachala, because his heart was still attracted to Sri Vrindavan forest and other places of Krishna's pastimes in Vrajabhumi. Text 205. Even so, I went through anguish when I thought of the kinds of good fortune the Orison devotees enjoyed, and when I reflected in various ways on my desire to be like those devotees. 206. When I heard the songs, prayers, and congregational chanting of the Lord's names in front of Lord Jagannath, I was disturbed because they reminded me of Mathura. Commentary. In the presence of Lord Jagannath, devotees would chant names of the Lord like Mathuranath, Vrindavan Chandra, and Govardhan Dharana. They would recite ancient prayers from the Puranas and prayers by modern authors. They would sing properly composed songs with suitable melody and rhythm. Hearing those auspicious sounds troubled Gopakumar's mind because they made him more vividly remember Mathura and started him thinking about going back. 207. Blessed by the strength of my closeness with saintly devotees, I was able to go see the lotus-eyed Lord, and whenever I went to see him, all my sorrow would dissolve. Thus, I never wanted to go anywhere else. Text 208. But because of my involvement with ruling the kingdom, my heart could never feel the complete, spontaneous ecstasy it used to feel from seeing the Lord. Commentary. By the mercy of the great devotees of Puri, Gopakumar got repeated darshan of the all-blissful Lord Jagannath, and every visit destroyed his sorrow. Only by the powerful mercy of the devotees was he able to relish the beauty of the Lord. On the strength of his own spiritual accomplishments alone, he would never have overcome his distress. Yet his happiness was never as full as before, because he was entangled in the management of the kingdom. Despite having officially offered his kingdom at the feet of Lord Jagannath, he was still burdened by the many anxieties of a king. 209. At Rath Yatra and other big festivals, I was surrounded by my royal entourage and unable to spend time enjoying the occasion. I could no longer worship Lord Jagannath according to my own desire in the various ways I had before. 210. So I handed over the burden of ruling the kingdom to the sons, ministers, and relatives of the previous king. And as before, I became uninvolved and aloof. Commentary. At last, he abdicated the throne. Text 212. I continued living nearby, happily chanting my mantra in private and offering service to the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath as I liked. Text 212. But because of the honor and respect I received from the populace, I could no longer feel happiness in Puri, and so I lost interest in staying there. Commentary. Gopakumar tried to refuse formal worship from his former subjects, but even when they obliged him, dispensing with formalities, they still treated him with great respect. Text 213. Early in the morning I went before Lord Jagannath to ask his permission to leave for Vrindavan. But oh, when I saw his beautiful face, I forgot all my plans. Commentary. Gopakumar reasoned like this: the Lord of the universe, for whose sake I left Brajabhumi, I have obtained directly here. How is it right for me to abandon him, and how can I find the power to do such a thing? And even if the same Lord wants to bring me back to his favorite playground, Vrindavan, to show me some special mercy, I still cannot go away from here without first getting his express permission. But when Gopakumar went before Lord Jagannath in the temple, as soon as he saw the Lord's divine face, he forgot everything. His mental pain, the remembrance of Vrindavan that caused the pain, and his intention to ask the Lord's permission to go. This pattern occurred day after day. Text 214. Thus, 1 year passed, and then one day I heard some detailed news of Mathura from visitors who had come from there. Commentary. Gopakumar heard these visitors describe the splendor of the cows, cowherds, birds, trees, forest animals, and other residents of such neighborhoods as Sri Vrindavan and Govardhan. Haribo. Text 215. That night, as I was lying in bed, tormented by sorrow and pain, the Supreme Lord Jagannath, who was pained by the suffering of others, gave me the following command. As dear as this holy city is to me, O son of a cowherd, my birthplace, Sri Mathura, is even more dear. Commentary. By calling his devotee Gopanandana, Lord Jagannath subtly hints that it is fitting for him to live in Vrindavan. Lord Jagannath still speaking to him in dream. Mathura is adorned with the various sights of my childhood pastimes, just as I always live here in Puri, wandering about everywhere. So do I live in Mathura. Commentary. Mathura is even more dear to the personality of Godhead than Purushottam Kshetra, because in Mathura he displayed his birth and childhood pastimes. Childhood technically means the years before maturity, which are divided into 3 phases called Kumara, Poganda, and Kaishor. Many scriptural statements describe human life as passing through birth, youth, and old age. For example, Janmal bhalyam tatak sarvo, jantu prapnoti yan yauvanam, avya hataiva bhavan, avya hataiva bhavati, tato nu divasang jada. Every creature is born, and then a child, and then a youth. And if his life is not interrupted prematurely, he daily approaches old age. Gopakumar might object that here in Puri, the Lord is visible, whereas in Mathura he is not. But Lord Jagannath here answers that he certainly lives in Mathura, wandering about and enjoying with his devotees. Text 218. Why constantly lament, wavering between one decision and another? Just go to Mathura, and in time you will surely see me in the form you desire. Commentary. The form of the Lord that Gopakumar cherished in his meditation was that of Sri Madan Gopal Dev. Lord Jagannath assured Gopakumar, you will see me in that form at the proper time in Mathura Bhumi. Therefore you will never again suffer sorrow or discontent. 219. Early that morning, at my residence, I received a flower garland from some Pujari Brahmanas, indicating the Lord's command. I placed the garland on my neck and departed, bowing down to the chakra on top of the temple. And as I saw it for the last time, and in this way, I came to this land of Mathura. Commentary. Just in case Gopakumar might judge his dream false, Lord Jagannath sent a garland from his morning puja as a sign of his approval. This confirmed that the Lord wanted him to go to Mathura. Lord Jagannath appeared on earth mainly to display his pastime of accepting formal worship in the temple, of his temple. And his Brahmana pujaris shared in this pastime. The Lord ordered his pujaris to take the garland off his neck and bring it to Gopakumar. And rather than go to the temple to see the Lord's lotus face, Gopakumar left at once for Mathura. Now that's real sankalpa. Thus ends the first chapter of part 2 of Srila Sanatana Goswami's Brhad Bhagavatamrta, entitled Vairagya, Renunciation. Jai Sri Jagannath Maharaj ki Jai. Sri Gopakumar ki Jai. All the eternal residents and devotees of Sri Jagannath Dham. Jai to the pujaris of Jagannath Dham. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo. 802, not bad. Okay, if we have any reflections or comments or discussions, please feel free.
So, that's from Noel Craver. Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All grace to Srila Prabhupada. I appreciated hearing today about Gopakuma and how humble he was, and the way he discusses his trials and tribulations, and how he continued to chant and do his service while feeling such separation. It felt relatable in some ways. How he says, when he saw Lord Jagannath's face, he forgot all of his plans. This text is so relatable. Thank you.
Bhakti Noel, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks.
That's from Goranga Gopal. Hare Krishna Maharaj, such a thought-provoking reading tonight. I wonder if you could comment a bit more on this verse. This chanting, please understand, is another form of service to Lord Sri Jagannath. Have faith in this and never give up your japa. It is so easy to neglect our japa sometimes, focusing on more practical service. It seems quite obvious that here we are shown a good example of how chanting is the source of all progress in bhakti. Thank you very much, your servant.
Well, there's some pretty obvious answers to that, to elaborate on that point. First of all, the two instructions that everyone gets an initiation and makes a vow, and even up to this day, of course sometimes individual gurus will add some individual vow that they appreciate or whatever, but generally speaking, the vows at initiation in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya are only two: to chant a certain number of rounds of japa, at least, in our case 16 rounds a day at least, and to follow the four regulative principles which will make our chanting inoffensive strictly. So I'll tell you an anecdotal story from Srila Prabhupada. He was once, it was either Los Angeles or San Francisco, don't remember which. Probably it was San Francisco because it wasn't recorded, which is unfortunate because it was really nectarian. Prabhupada was sitting there and he has his leg up I've seen his pictures, sitting back against his bolster with his, knee on his elbow on his knee, and he had his japa bead in his hand, and you could see that he was chanting because he was moving the beads. And so then he said to us, so become very attached to chanting on your beads, because the time may come in the future when you don't have all of these facilities. And he meant the temple, the communities, and all of this. And you may find yourself somewhere, sometime, with just your bead bag, and you'll have to start the Krishna consciousness movement again by yourself. And we just went, oh, what? It was an amazing moment, actually. But it showed, it actually illustrates this point at how important the japa is. It's even more important than the deity worship, because it's the Bhagavat Marg, the relishing of Krishna's holy name by chanting japa. Because inside the holy name, or contained within the holy name, is the Lord's form, and his beauty is form, and his pastimes, and his entourage, and everything. His holy land. It's all contained within the Mahamantra. But it requires divine vision to see it. And we get the divine vision by chanting Hare Krishna. Not just in the beginning dutifully, but not just dutifully, but with a intense desire and sankalpa. And this is what Gopakuma had above anything else. He had this sankalpa. He was looking for Madan Gopal. And he was finding out that he's not going to find him until he goes to Vrindavan, because he doesn't leave a step outside of Vrindavan. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Primavati Devi Dasi. Why is Maharaj reading the invocation from Brhad Bhagavatamrta itself?
Say that again.
I think the invocation that you did at the beginning.
Oh,
prayers to
why am I
Srimad
reading
Bhagavatam.
it?
Yeah, where you're reading it from.
I'm reading it from the Krishna Leela Stava. It's a BBT publication, which was also translated by Gopiparanadhana Prabhu and commented upon. And because the Brhad Bhagavatamrta is based on the Bhagavatam, these prayers, these 5 prayers from Sanatana Goswami, the author of Brhad Bhagavatamrta, glorify the holy name and the Srimad Bhagavatam especially in the most wonderful way I've ever heard. So I'm doing this to invoke the pastime or the pleasure of Sanatana Goswami, so that he will make it easier for us to understand what's being said here. Because this is really high stuff. But by the mercy of Sanatana Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, through Gopiparanadhana Prabhu, who is the most chaste devotee I've ever met in my life, to Prabhupada. That's what it is and why we do it. To become empowered, to relish this book.
That's from Anadi Kishore.
Anadi Kishore, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. It seems that sometimes Gopakuma sometimes displays symptoms of sadhana bhakti, raganuga bhakti, and sometimes prema bhakti. And he has even been given a spiritual body for his spiritual master. Is it possible to understand his stage of devotion in terms of Rupa Goswami verse on the stages of bhakti, or is something else going on?
Yeah, both are going on. Part of it is that Gopakumar is actually qualified by his birth and by his purification and by his qualities. And second of all, his spiritual master, as we will find out later on, as I already mentioned earlier in the reading, is actually Krishna personally, himself. And when he goes to see him in Vaikuntha, before he actually goes to Goloka-Vrindavan, he reveals to him that he is his spiritual master. So when Krishna directly is your spiritual master, those kinds of things can happen. Anything can happen. And the faith in that is our gateway to higher symptoms and higher realizations. But on the other hand, it doesn't contradict Rupa Goswami's teachings, because Rupa Goswami sometimes describes what is called shadow attachment. Sometimes even in the beginning of one's spiritual life. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but the first time when I was initiated, I had so many experiences. When I first touched prasadam to my lips, to my tongue, I had experiences, spiritual experiences. And when I first started chanting japa, and I remember when I first started going to the Mangalarti in San Francisco, I would walk out the door, and it was in a lower quality neighborhood, a mission district, low class district. And yet I came out after Mangalarti and everything looked bright and beautiful. And like it was a different place. That was when I first came. When I first touched the books, when I got two of Prabhupada's books from two separate sources, and I was living on top of a mountain, very remote, and still I got two books from separate places. And when I got them and looked at them, they were the same author. Tears came out of my eyes, and I shook. My hair went up. I didn't have prema. I was getting what is called shadow attachment. So sometimes even in neophyte conditions, if we're favored by Krishna, and we've done enough devotional service in our previous lives, we can actually feel shadow attachment that's coming from the hearts of someone else, or coming from the holy name or the deities, by their grace, by their special mercy. Hare Krishna.
It's from Vamshi Vilas. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for reading. Thank you for bringing out the point about how Gopakuma's guru is Krishna, why so many amazing things can happen to him.
Yes.
I find it interesting how Gopakuma is attached to Vrindavan even without exact knowledge of Krishna. Is he attached to Vrindavan because of chanting his mantra?
No, he's attached to Vrindavan because he was born there, and he has the qualifications of innocence and honesty. He's qualified.
From Rati Manjari. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for another wonderful and amazing reading. I was wondering whether there is any statement on the length of the time period in which Gopakuma's journey takes place. Or is this not important?
Do you remember what his guru said to him in Jagannath? We just read it. May you live a long life. May you never get old. You'll stay in the same body as a cowherd. He's telling him, even though he doesn't know it yet, but he's telling him that that's who he is. That's his spiritual identity. And again, because that's Krishna, that's possible. There are sahajas in India that accept a process called Siddha Pranali, whereby at initiation you're told what your service is and told how to worship in that service. It's called Siddha Pranali. But I just read from Prabhupada that that Siddha Pranali leads to the Sahaja platform, where one takes things cheaply and thinks that Krishna will be attracted to your body, even though it's abominable in all ways. That's sahajism. Thinking one is more advanced than he is, stopping to hear the scriptures because they're for lower class, lower, persons, and they become proud of their position and proud of their whatever they think their realization is. And most of them eventually fall down. Most of them. That's my experience from living in Govardhan for 26 years.
From Champakalata Radhika Vidasi. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for clearing how important to chant rounds first, then deity worship. I used to perform deity worship first, then chant my 16 rounds.
Well, whether you do one or the other, first or last, is not important. But to remember that the chanting is the most important thing is important. If you're in a situation where you're a pujari and you have to worship the deity, or if you've accepted the responsibility of in your home of worshiping the deity, then it's not a wrong thing to do to worship the deity first and then chant. The chanting can still be the most important thing, because the deity worship is in the realm of Vaidhi Bhakti. But when you're in advanced consciousness, then it becomes higher. Depends on your consciousness. But before you get there, and even after you're there, still the holy name is the most important thing, because it's given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was vibrated by Lord himself, by Krishna himself, in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he gave us the order in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that everybody should take this Harinam and preach it and spread it. Therefore, it's more important, most important. Panchatarki Vida and Bhagavat-marga. But most of us, especially in the West, have to take this Panchatarki Vida very important, because it keeps our mind and our body and our senses purified by following the rules and regulations of deity worship: cleanliness, punctuality, regularity.
From Anadi Kishore Das.
You can read a nice purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 15, text, guess what? 108. And there's a long purport to that verse that describes how we need to do deity worship. Even though the Lord's name is transcendental, and if we're in a liberated condition, it doesn't need initiation in order to fully act. But for us to perceive the holy name, our hearts have to be purified. And the deity worship and the Gayatri mantras help to bring us to that platform of chanting. So anything that helps bring us to the platform of pure chanting, we should accept. And not imitate liberated souls, as Gopakuma has now already become.
From Anadi Kishore Das. Thank you for such a nice answer. Yes, I clearly remember having wonderful shadow attachment experiences in the beginning of my practice, particularly when I first chanted on beats.
Yes, and why does Krishna do that? To encourage us, to convince us that we are going in the right direction. Because the flow of the current of the world, especially now, but in general in the material world, is going in a different direction. We're going against the current.
From Viola Simon.
That is Brajaloka.
Oh, Brajaloka.
Dasi.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances or glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you and your daily readings. I really like to hear today about the auspicious effect of the Lord's lotus face's darshan, by which all suffering ceases. It's a good formula for difficult times. I also have some question. As a member of Srila Prabhupada's movement, should we have some special sankalpa when we chant the mantra?
Yes. May the hearts of all conditioned souls become receptive and be able to taste what I'm tasting.
Next question. What was the reason for the awakening of the desire for personal service of the Lord in Gopakuma? Could you please explain exactly how this relates to being immersed in the beauty of the Lord?
Because the Lord is all beautiful. And when your eyes open, then you'll see Him as all beautiful and you'll forget everything else. And that's the goal. The deity is not different than Krishna. But because Gopakuma belongs in Vrindavan, the Lord knows that. And so He's guiding him back to Vrindavan, which is the gateway to Goloka. Hare Krishna.
Usually we hear that we need spiritual knowledge for improvement in spiritual life. How should we understand that statement that the ignorance helped Gopakuma to achieve his goal? Thank you so much for the reading and the wonderful purpose.
Read it again.
Yeah. Usually we hear that we need spiritual knowledge for improvement in spiritual life. How should we understand that statement that the ignorance helped Gopakuma to achieve his goal?
Ignorance did not help him to achieve his goal. That's a misconception. Innocence helped him to achieve his goal. Because the innocence that he had, he was not ignorant in the sense of the mode of ignorance. He was ignorant in the sense that he hadn't been fully trained in spiritual knowledge. You can get that full knowledge that you need just from the holy name, which is the goal of the whole, which is the purpose of the whole pastime, actually. But it's also true that when we speak of knowledge, spiritual knowledge, we're speaking of more understanding. In the Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter, there's a wonderful verse. Nahi jnanena sadvicham pabitram iavidyate tat sayam yogasanyas kalinatmani vindate. That verse says that there's nothing so pure and transcendental as there's nothing so pure as transcendental knowledge. And that transcendental knowledge is revealed to one as his devotional service matures. And along the way, that same spiritual knowledge becomes more and more revealed. It becomes more precise and more clear. And as that develops, then the distractions that of the material world, they fall away. So in that way, ignorance of the material world or forgetfulness of the attractions of the material world, which also is part of, there's two aspects of Maya. There's vidya and avidya. So vidya is an aspect of Maya which gives us access to Krishna consciousness. And avidya takes us away from attachment to Krishna. So that's the knowledge. And that's the ignorance. vidya and avidya. Anyone who is in the material world has access to those two energies of the material energy. But that vidya is not the full thing. It's knowledge that helps us to want to go there and to go there. Just like in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there are 8 verses, or no, 4 or 5 verses. I think 8, 9, 10, 11, 4 verses, which describes in reverse order the goal and how to achieve it. Do you remember? 12:8. Just fix your mind upon me, without deviation, 24/7. That's the goal. If you can't do that, Krishna says in the next verse, then follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga. If you can't do that for some reason, then work for me. Because by working for me, you will get a desire. The desire to be with me will awaken in your heart. And you'll get attracted to sadhana bhakti. And if you can't do that, for some reason, social, political, familial, whatever it is, then learn to give up the fruits of your activity and become independent. Work for charity, work for country, work for where you give yourself in service and give up the fruits. And if you can't do that, Krishna says, cultivate knowledge. Better than knowledge is meditation, or the contemplation of that knowledge. And better than that is coming to the stage of being detached from the fruits of material life. And that verse, at the end of that verse, brings you back to the verse just before it. Live free from desire for the fruits and live independently without being dependent on anyone else. When you do that properly, then you will want to work for Krishna. And if you do that properly, you will want to perform sadhana bhakti. And if you do that properly, you will come to the point of wanting to be with Krishna personally and play with him and eat with him, live with him. Hare Krishna. And I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for those lovely questions and reflections and discussion points and comments. Thank you so much. Now I will take your leave. Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. By Gaura's love, we can get everything. And without it, we can't get anything. See you tomorrow night, same time, same topic, same place. De prem, de la 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 prem. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.